thanks for sliding into my DMs.
And talk about
and
testicles.
all right, we are back. Best hour of their day. Special guest. Well, I guess I say special all the time. So our next guest, but you are special. You are special. We have Ashleigh VanHouten. Most of you probably have no idea who she is. I didn't know who Ashleigh was. Here's what happens. Ashleigh, I'm going to tell you something. We're going to start this off the right way. If
I
you
like it.
talk about if you talk about testicles on the internet, you get two types of ladies in your DMs, right? You being one of them. Most of the time, they're like a different type of woman, and then you slid into the DMs. But it wasn't because of what people are thinking, right? It was because you, like me, are involved in the carnivore and meat based. I like to say meat based these days, but meat based nutrition. And you actually have a book out. It Takes Guts, all about cooking these organ meats.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I reached out to you because there are very few people, male or female, talking about testicles on the internet that are talking about it the way we are. So
You're not looking. I was going to say you're not looking in the right places. There's plenty of people talking about testicles.
yeah, just not the way we are. But I mean, truly, we can talk about my background in nutrition and what I'm passionate about, but I find it really interesting, even in our world, even in the carnivore, meat based, paleo, whole foods industry, how organ meats are still seen as something that's extreme or weird or unpleasant or strange. And I really, really want to change people's perception of that.
Knowing we were going to talk, that was one of the things I've been thinking a lot about. I was like, where in evolution or, the last couple hundred years specifically, because I'm sure 2, 3, 400 years, you kill a cow, you're like, this is all we got, right? Like, we better take advantage and eat everything. And then somewhere along the way, I think like there was a split. It was like, we don't eat these things either because they're gross, or there's a group of people that classify them as a delicacy, like sweetbreads or chopped liver, if you grew up like Jewish, like I did. So it's like, where do you know where that started?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
it's
tell me. I'm
yeah.
asking.
Here's the answer. It's a lot more recent than people think. And I mean, I also love to say that even now, even in our very modern world of Western foods and hyper palatable, super easy food, most cultures still eat nose to tail. And when
Yeah,
I put this book out, basically every culture except for like modern North American were like, yeah,
it
of course I
is.
eat everything. Of course I do this. But really, kind of the switch, I think, happened in like with the agricultural revolution. So when food became mass produced and when it was less likely that you were going to go to your farmer friend down the street or your local butcher to get your food, and you were going to go to a big box grocery store, right, where people were just kind of like mass producing cattle and sending things through and turning things around really quickly, organ meats fell out of favor a little bit because they are more delicate and they're maybe harder to transport. Like, we're transporting this food across the country now instead of just like, there's a cow down the street and it's been butchered and we're going to eat all of it. And
Is
certainly
that where
people
the
were
word
hunting less.
is that where the word delicacy came from?
I don't know about that.
Well, I
But
mean,
I
as
know
you
that.
said it, I'm like, that makes sense. Like, because you're saying like to transfer brains or like I get bags of bone marrow, right? And
Mhm.
it's like it's waxy, it like falls apart. Like, I could see how shipping just a chunk of a meat would be easier because of the
Yep.
hey, I'm about to say it, because of the
Yeah.
delicacy.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
we
that's what
just came
happened.
up
And
with. I think you get two smart meat eating people on a conversation. They get to the bottom of just about anything.
I'm sure you could Google it and find out if that's where it's from. But I mean, essentially, people just started
Let's
seeing
assume.
organ meats. People started
I
seeing
assume
organ
I'm
meats
right.
less frequently, right? Like, they weren't seeing them as much. And so the sort of tradition, like, here's how we cook the stuff and prepare it, and here's why it's important, and here's why it's nutritious, it just fell out of favor. People saw it less. And so as people are less familiar with things, it's like a sort of human innate response to be distrustful or scared of things that are unfamiliar. So we're used to our chicken breasts and we're used to our steaks and we're used to our ground beef. We're not used to these other cuts. And so they became either delicacies, like they're harder to find and harder to get, so we can charge more, or they became like the offcuts that people who didn't have a lot of money, because you can buy a ton of, liver for a cheaper amount because it doesn't
So
taste as good and
cheap.
people don't want it. Exactly. So
Yeah.
really, that's what it is. It's really just a lack of familiarity. And that's the thing I'm really trying to show with this book is that, it's just because you aren't used to it, just because you didn't grow up with it, doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make it gross. In fact, these are foods that we should all be eating and would drastically improve our health if we could just like open our mind a little bit.
Well, it's funny because, like it or not, Liver King has really been at the forefront of this as well. I assume you've heard of Liver King.
Mm-hmm.
And, Paul Saladino, we've had on the podcast before, promoting Nose to Tail. But Liver King's out there and he's on a lot of podcasts these days. And it's always interesting to watch him bring liver and other organ meats on. Of course, he eats them raw, very different than, your cookbook is, putting out there. And these people are like gagging on liver. And I'm like, sure. Does raw liver taste great? Does it have a nice texture? Probably. Like the answer is no. However, these same people would have no problem like eating a Twinkie. I'm like, you should get more nauseous feeling like I'm eating fake. This is fake versus this is. People go to get steak tartare and we eat sushi all the time, but all of a sudden eating something raw of an organ meat is this. It would just like anything when you're not accustomed to it and it's not the norm. You probably just it's just unusual. It's weird for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with all these guys I've interviewed and talked to, and Paul Saladino endorsed my book and all of these things. And I, was
Yeah,
taking
smart
ancestral
guy.
supplement products for a really long time. I mean, Liver King figured out how to get attention, right? And he does a really good
Well,
job of it.
he
I
looks he does it he looks the part.
Yeah, I mean, and I hope that people who actually come across his stuff and think, okay, that guy's a bit nuts, but I am interested in organ meats and eating nose to tail. I see what he's saying, can then do a little bit more research and find more moderate, everyday, normal, reasonable people like me who are like, here are some other ways you can try this instead of like going out naked into a field and eating a raw testicle. You don't have to do it that way. That's the other thing. I get a lot of people coming to me who are like, I do the like swallowing the liver every day and it's just I don't like it and it's gross and like should I? I'm like, you don't have to do it that way. There are other ways you can hide it. There are other ways you can be subtle about it. There are other options. It doesn't have to be just like carnivore. It doesn't have to be a steak and 2 pounds of ground beef every day. Like there are so many ways you can incorporate these ideas into your diet in a way that's sustainable and pleasurable and works for you.
Yeah, and that's why for me I've kind of shifted that mindset of carnivore to meat based.
Mm-hmm.
Because I found my body does a little better with some carbohydrates. My cholesterol certainly looks better on the
Mm.
charts with some carbohydrates. My wife's happier with some carbohydrates. So for
Yeah.
all those reasons, meat based no different than people say they're plant based. Like
Mm-hmm.
meat is the foundation of my diet. It's how I get all my protein, and from there I stack everything else on there. And I think
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and Liver King talks about it. Like I'd love to have him on the show, but he does talk about don't let perfection be the opposite of good. Like start somewhere. Like
Mm-hmm.
if choking down raw liver doesn't suit your needs, hey, pick up a cookbook that tells you how to cook because it is very different than cooking your standard meat product. So I was really psyched when you reached out. And by the way, I wish I could remember, but like I think I told you this when you hit me up. Like almost within 5 minutes, somebody had said you to me, and
Mm.
I just hadn't got around to messaging you yet. But somebody was like, "You got to check this girl out." Um, I what I was excited about is this is how I make my liver. When I'm not eating it raw, which I do a little bit, I'll just like cut it up and literally just throw it on a pan without any seasoning.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's how I eat most things. I think most men are like, I don't eat for taste. I would love it if it tasted better, but I'm eating for function rather than form, if
Mm-hmm.
you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't had a chance to really dive in yet, but I want to learn how to make my liver better. And then two other things I eat, I say three other things: bone marrow,
Yeah.
actually four: heart, tongue, and testicles. I do the same for all of them. I just throw it on the pan, except for the bone marrow. I'll literally just throw it in the microwave for like 30 seconds, just enough to warm it up.
Mm-hmm.
So, long way of asking you, when did you realize there was a need for people to have a cookbook specifically for organ meat?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can relate to you because I have a background, like I come from like a bodybuilding fitness background, which is all
Yeah,
about functional eating.
for the record, I'm sitting here like you should not be able to tell that I'm at a gym. But the first thing Ashleigh said was like, "You're at a gym," and I was like, I mean,
I
you
could
could hear
hear
it a
the
little
metal
in the
clanging,
yeah.
dude. I could hear it.
That was one of the most impressive things I've ever
Thank you.
seen. So I'm
Yeah.
like, literally, this could be like a gym, a prison cell, it could be anything, and you're like, no, it's a gym.
I know. I
So
know. Yeah. Yeah.
impressive.
So I have a meathead background. I have a functional eating
Well,
background
you're
for
the muscle
sure.
maven, correct, on
That's
Instagram?
it. Yep, that's me.
Yeah.
And you know, I am not a formally trained chef, so I didn't grow up, you know, with the like French and Italian chefs who teach you how to cook organ meats. Because if you do Google, besides my book and maybe one or two others, if you're like Googling recipes for how to cook organ meats, it's usually these very elaborate, like
Oh yeah.
sauce heavy French recipes that are just not accessible to the average person. And I wrote this book actually at the beginning of the pandemic because I've always eaten more sort of like a paleo, you know, whole foods, like meat based, as you said. I actually call it carnivore ish, which is the name of my second book back there, which is sort of just, you know, a cheeky way of being like, just eat more meat, people. Like, and I'm speaking specifically to women who tend to have a hard time with that. But so, you know, I was eating paleo, I was eating nose to tail, and I was starting to really understand the importance from a sustainability, from an ethical, and from a nutritional point of view, how important it is to eat the whole animal. And as I was sharing this stuff, like on social media and through different channels, I was getting a ton of people like sending me barf emojis, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you eating? And I was also getting a ton of people saying, like, this is interesting. Like, how do you cook this? How does it taste? What's it like? Where do you find it? And so I'm realizing like there is a probably very small, very niche community who would be really interested in this information and interested in getting it in a way that is accessible to the average person, like you, for example, who you know how to cook, you know how to make protein, but you're not doing anything fancy. You're not doing anything that maybe, you know, on a weekend is going to take you all day and have 50 steps. You just want to put meat and somewhere and cook it and then eat it, right? And that is tends to be my approach. And so when people first told me, they were like, how do you cook heart? And I'm like, you just put it in a pan until it's cooked and you eat it. I don't know what to tell you. But as people kept reaching out to me, I'm like, okay, I actually see that maybe there's a need in the industry for like actual step-by-step holding people's hands a little bit. And the book is very educational in that respect too, because I also break down every cut, the nutritional benefits, culturally, how different cultures have prepared it or made it or used it, and how you can do it and how you can prep it and how you can source it and all of those things. So it's really like you can read this cookbook from start to finish as well as make the recipes. But you know, I thought at the beginning, I was like, maybe I'll get like 10 of my friends to like, I'll guilt them into buying this and that'll be it. And then when I published it, I realized there's actually a much bigger audience than I thought, because we're talking hunters, we're talking carnivores, we're talking people from every culture around the world who's like, yeah, I know, like I do this and I want some more ideas. So there's actually been a bigger community than I thought, and it's been really exciting seeing people open their mind to it and finding recipes that they enjoy and that's improving their health and like feeding their kids nose to tail. And like kids often we don't give them enough credit. Like a lot of times we think of kids as being very picky and, you know, they're not going to eat anything but chicken fingers. But I find that if you can kind of do it right and get in at the right time, kids can actually be like more open-minded about food than we are. So it's been a really cool experience, and I learned along the way too, because like I said, I wasn't a professional. I still don't necessarily consider myself a professional. I'm just one of the most knowledgeable people about cooking organ meats, because there's not a whole hell of a lot of us out there, right? So I'm learning as I go too.
Yeah, my daughter ate a half a tub of cream cheese for dinner last night. So, but she's willing to try like literally anything. And I
I mean,
think the
protein, I
other,
don't know, that's not bad.
yeah, that's what that was my excuse when my wife came home and she was like, "Did she eat the dinner I left?" No, but she did eat half a tub of cream cheese. Hey, she's got some Jewish genetics in her, so I'm like, that's
There
normal.
you go. There you
But
go.
I think you know, for me also, I feed my dogs raw food. And I was like, okay, they're animals, they're thriving. It's been proven to be beneficial for them on a you know, from a health perspective. Like, why aren't you know, and whether it's raw or not, again, it's just all meat versus
Mm-hmm.
kibble. And like you talked about earlier, the agricultural revolution. I think you mentioned the demographic that'd be interested in your book, and I think this podcast is great because CrossFitters are pretty notorious for like trying to be early adopters in the health and fitness space,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, hey, we should do aerobic capacity. Let's all CrossFitters get all in. Like, let's buy assault bikes. Let's buy echo bikes, or you know, we need pre and post workout, cool. They do
Hmm.
it, and now it's like, hey, by the way, these organ meats are super nutritious.
Yeah.
Let's check those out. Because I'm every day at the box. There's more and more people, whether it's simply buying a cow, so they have organic grass fed meat in their freezer, or
Hmm.
jump into that organ meat bandwagon. Before we get into some of the early recipes, I do think you're such a unique perspective. You're a well muscled, female who happens to eat a decent amount of meat. So it's like two of these kind of stereotypes. Like, how do you deal with the people who are afraid of getting bulky lifting weight? Because clearly, lifting, I mean, at least from this, 1,000 miles away, like, and the cover of your cookbook and your social media, like, muscle is attractive on a female. And you're
Hmm.
certainly not what I would call. You probably have spent your whole life trying to get bulky, much as myself, to no
Hmm.
avail, right?
Yep.
So now you just look like a lean, attractive woman. And,
Appreciate that.
so how do you deal with women telling you that? And then my second question is, you talk about meat, and there's the big kick for vegetarianism and veganism, which, by the way, all good if you want to do it for ethical reasons, which we can discuss in the future, right? Like, is it actually more ethical? Like, how many animals are getting killed for that grass over there? But so those two things, how do you deal with?
Yeah, I mean, that first point, it's important, and I'm glad that you brought it up. And by the way, I have before my bodybuilding background, I actually started my my adult athletic career in CrossFit. I was working out at the original Black Box in New York in like
Oh, you
2008,
used to go
2009. Yeah, yeah,
CrossFit
that's,
NYC. You know
yep,
Harry? Harry?
yep, yep,
Keith.
Court.
Oh, Court
Oh,
Wing, and
yeah, yep.
did you know Keith Wittenstein, Coach
Oh,
Panda?
yeah, oh, yeah,
He's
oh, yeah.
one of my best friends in life. Yeah, that's awesome.
Keith is great. You see him, tell him I said hi. He will most likely know who you're talking about. We're friends on
Awesome.
Instagram still.
Yeah, cool. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. Yeah, Keith's a great
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, I have always found muscle attractive on everybody, and have pursued getting as much of it myself as I possibly could. And it's continually frustrating to me that this is something that women are taught in on every facet, on every level, at every stage of life. And so it's incredibly difficult to unlearn. And as a coach, I've developed a number of strength training programs for women, and these books I write for everyone, but I'm speaking to women in my head when I'm writing it, because they're the ones who have a hard time eating enough protein and working out the way they should, because they are afraid of getting big. First of all, as if being big is the worst thing in the world. You look at
Yeah,
like the
being
CrossFit
harder to
Games,
kill,
but
right?
what's so bad, first of all, with being like, if you were a little bulky, you won't get bulky. But if you did, is that the worst thing in the world to have like a little
It's
bit too much muscle? Like, let's stop that. Like, why do you have to be the tiniest person in the world? That's not fun. It's not
well,
fun to be, skinny and hungry all the time.
and I think a big misconception about the games athlete. Like, I've been out there on the floor with them, not competing, judging, and they're not big. They're just lean, right?
You
Like
know,
you go to bodybuilding stage, they look bigger because they're so. I mean, Tia's been on the cover of all these women health magazines. I don't think any man on the planet finds her unattractive.
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of assholes out there who do, but who
Sure,
care?
there
Who
are.
cares?
Yeah,
And
that's
that's the
true.
other
But
thing,
yeah,
is like, we're not doing this all day, every day to be hot to every man that looks at us on the internet. You're trying to be strong and functional and confident in yourself. And I actually wrote my master's in communication, my thesis on CrossFit. So that's a whole other thing we could talk about. But I remember
really.
when I worked out in New York, the first time I saw like Sam Briggs in person. She was at like
Yeah,
CrossFit Virtuosity or
she's
something.
lean.
And
Yeah.
like I saw her and I'm like, she's not a massive person. But anyway, like, it matters. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. I still get a
And I
ton
also
of
want
these
to
comments from
say,
people. Yeah.
I do want to say before we go further, you are more muscular than Keith. So I did want to
Well,
throw that out
he's
there.
so tall though, he like, it's
No
hard to.
excuses. He's got the dad bod going. He's got 3 kids. He's 50 years old with like 3 kids running around. He's
That's
crazy.
another thing. Yeah, he has a much
Yeah.
busier life. Although, I have a 1 year old, so no excuses. But anyway, one of the things, like, I used to get mad. I used to get like angry and sort of like irritated and like want to like shake women who are like eating no food and doing Pilates all day and wondering why they don't have the toned body that they are searching for. And now I have, with age comes wisdom, and I have a bit more of a gentle approach where I'm just dedicating my entire like working life to changing these perceptions by living it and by sharing it with the people who are ready to hear it. And, I have been approached again in the gym many times by women who are like, hey, what's your workout? Or like, do you have some advice for me? Because I really want to like build some muscle. I want to look great and you look great. And I'll always tell them, I'm like, they'll say I'm scared of getting bulky. And I'll be like, okay, well, let's be honest here. Do you think I'm bulky? And inevitably, they're always going to say no, because they wouldn't have come up to me if they thought I was bulky. They're
Yeah.
like, I eat a ton of food and I work out to build as much muscle as possible. And I've been doing that probably 20 years. I'm not bulky yet. So it's not going to happen to you accidentally. I really encourage you to work as hard as you can without that fear. I think that so much of us are like eating and living and working out with this fear of what will happen if you get big or if you look masculine or whatever. And yeah, I have had like old dudes in the gym say like, hey, you probably don't need to do shoulders anymore. They're probably big enough. I'm like, who are you talking to, old man? Like, do you think I'm doing this for you to look at me? Like, we have our own goals, and like, it doesn't really matter what other people think. If other people do think maybe your shoulder veins are unpleasant or your quads are too big, they're not for you, So anyway,
Muscle is like money. You can never have too much.
yeah. And I mean, again, it's not going to happen accidentally. So some people maybe don't like the look of a elite CrossFit athlete. Some people don't like the look of a bodybuilder. That's fine. You're not going to get there. You're not going to get there accidentally. You wouldn't get there. A lot of people won't get there working hard for 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
so
what, I tell people, like, don't worry. You're not going to work hard enough to get bulky. Like you don't have it in you, because I've been pushing myself and doing CrossFit and, as a man with testosterone, like, and like you said, women often, one of the most common faults we found, my wife and I traveled the country doing nutrition seminars, and probably 80 to 90% of women, A, weren't eating enough, and B, weren't, by default, but also those that were eating enough calories were rarely eating enough protein. And then they would hold weight, as you're probably aware, like in the midsection, and they like, I can't shake this weight. And we're like, you're eating 800, even 1,200 calories a day. And it's like, I know someone's told you 1,200 calories is acceptable, but you're doing CrossFit. Like, you probably need, at an absolute minimum, 1,800. But, as soon as they start eating more, they're like, oh, I feel better. Oh, I'm sleeping better. Oh, I'm less irritable. And by the way, my belly fat's gone. So it's pretty, it's a, I want to say, throughout the pandemic or epidemic or whatever, but it is a pretty big deal in the world out there.
Well, if you don't understand women's physiology, and most women don't, and they certainly aren't being taught by their fitness programs and their coaches for the most part, because people don't know it. If you don't understand women's physiology, it's very hard for someone to understand that eating more can help them lose weight.
What's up, guys? Fern. One of the things we always talk about, one of the main purposes of owning an affiliate, is impact. If we think about the hierarchy for a business, impact is at the top of that. If we build the businesses that we want, if we develop the coaches that we want, we build the team, we build the community, one of the things that we can have inside the walls of the box is impact in the broader community, and somebody who's crushing it in that is Trish. So tell me about your motto for your gym.
So when we first opened, we made it one village, one community, because I wanted to be the CrossFit affiliate that wasn't just the CrossFit facility, but like we did things within the community, whether that means, working with the kids in the area. So we work with a ton of the sports teams. We work with the kids in the school. We do fundraising events for the local community. We have business owners that whenever we do events outside of the gym, we try to make sure we give back to them. With the move, we made sure we used all of our members to like paint and use any vendor we possibly could within the house of our gym.
That's what it's all about, guys. Build a box of your dreams. You can have impact in the larger community and have fun while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Or eating more can help them improve their body composition and look leaner. It's this simple equation of like, well, if I just hardly eat anything, I'm going to lose weight, right? That makes sense to people who don't understand how women's bodies work. But when you understand our complicated hormonal makeup and how our bodies are very intelligently designed to hold on to fat when we are starving it, but that's it. That's why we have to teach people. I just developed this it's strength training for women certification program for coaches, which is essentially like just a very overarching, not even super in depth, but it's basically a program for coaches to learn the basics of women's physiology, hormonal makeup, cycle health, all of those things to better inform how they're going to help train their clients in terms of things like recovery and, nutrition and things like that, we just sometimes take this very basic, easy approach because, dudes are easier in almost every way, right? Your hormones are more simple. They just are, right?
My wife was having a meltdown the other day and I was like, you're being a woman, right? I was like, and then like, she's cool because like, once I call her out on it, she's like, okay, I get it. You can't read my mind. I was like, you nailed it. You nailed it.
Admitting that our hormones are more complicated is not making us inferior. We are pretty much superior in every single way.
For the record, women are the far superior species.
Except for upper body strength, we are better at everything, right?
Even then, most women are stronger than me. But, watching a baby come out of my wife, I was like, oh, shit is crazy. Like, I'm going to be honest and really transparent with you right now. Like, there are some mornings on the toilet where I'm like, this hurts really bad. Like, this is a struggle. And I'm like, I saw a baby and, like, she tore a little bit. I'm like, I never want to experience that. Like, cool. Like, I do want to eat more for 9 months, but it's not worth it at the end. Like, there's no amount of fettuccine Alfredo that's worth pushing a baby out of your body.
My husband is a 15-year special forces veteran, and he was a competitive CrossFit athlete, and he's the most impressive person I know. And he watched me have a natural childbirth, and he's like, men aren't shit. And I was like, agreed, they aren't.
You went natural?
Oh yeah, all natural, baby, all natural.
Oh wow!
I trained for it. And this going back to the
what are you doing?
I'll tell you how I did it. And going back to the food thing, I was not, I was sort of mid 30s, we'll say, when I got pregnant, which is just on the cusp of okay, you're getting a little old to have a kid, 36, you're not old, but you're not a baby. Your doctor is saying you should probably be on prenatals for a couple of years, leading up to it. Just make sure you're healthy and good to go. I was eating organ meats. And when my husband and I decided, hey, we're in a pandemic, we're bored, it's now or never.
Let's have some.
Got pregnant immediately. Got pregnant immediately. Very little. And again, I can't say all of this stuff happened because I ate organ meats and because I was healthy and because I strength trained. But those things certainly don't hurt at all. And I had a relatively as good as it can be pregnancy. I mean, it's a marathon and it's so uncomfortable and so unpleasant. But I didn't have any nausea. I ate organ meats and high protein throughout my entire pregnancy. I walked a lot and strength trained to the best of my ability. And I did a ton of mental work and preparation. And I think people who are listening to this who are, maybe competitive athletes or just sort of hard charging CrossFitters, you understand the importance of visualizing an event, a workout, a competition. And that's literally what I did for 10 months. And I knew what I wanted. I knew how I wanted to do it. And I got pretty damn close to exactly what I wanted. And I gave birth at a birth center and I went home with my kid 2 hours after pushing him out.
You went home 2 hours later?
And he was a big baby.
How big was your baby?
8 pounds, 10 ounces, 22.5 inches. I have a big husband.
Yeah. Madison was not she was 6 when she came out. They shrink a little or whatever after, but that was crazy. 8 pounds. We have a really good friend, the Charlesworths. Jen has had 2 babies naturally, and I want to say one of her babies, Cash, was 10 pounds.
They're getting bigger crazy these days.
That girl is crazy.
Bigger. Well, and they also nutrition, right?
Yeah, her husband. I mean, they're CrossFitters, and her husband's a massive human being.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it. That is. I can't believe you want to. I think my wife would have went home, but I was more I'm not ready for this. I need to stay here for a day.
I mean, no
and the nurse
ready.
Helped out. Yeah, the nurse helped out. So do you feed your baby organ meat?
Yeah. So
at a year.
No, much earlier than that. He
But
started,
he's a year now.
He's 14 months now. And he started to express an interest in eating real food around 5 or 6 months. And so we slowly started kind of experimenting. And again, I can't say A equals B, but I think the fact that I ate a lot of these things when I was pregnant made it a smoother transition to him trying these things. But one of the things people don't realize, if you have small children, people think again of like the toddler who will only eat one thing. But when babies are very young, like when you're first introducing food to them, they actually can handle stronger flavors a lot more than we think they can. And that's really the time to do it. Like I was feeding him straight up cod liver, chicken liver mousse, bone
Ooh,
marrow.
chicken liver mousse.
Yeah,
It's
and
all
he
in the
not
book.
even
It's all in the book, right? People,
all in the book.
check it out.
All
Check
in the
it
book.
out.
But
Yeah.
he didn't even make a face. Like he's just like, okay, delicious, great. Like, and babies inherently know. Like he reaches for the protein first every single time. Like he knows.
Madison does that. She just prefers it in cream cheese, but she does go for the.
I mean, listen, I feel like everybody would if you have the chance, right?
Dude, as you know, sometimes it's just like whatever is gonna not make you freak out right now. Like go.
100%.
You want to talk about? She literally was just handfuls of cream cheese last night. But that's all so cool. And I think there is that misconception out there, like, oh, baby, like you start them, like you go to these tribes out there and other cultures where like they're so muscular and so healthy and live, the average lifespan is significantly longer. I mean, we can talk about the fact that they have less, physical things, so they're happier and technology and all
cardiovascular
that.
disease and all those things.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the things you notice is their kids are, moving at a young age and, eating the same things as their parents. So I want to ask you about the recipes, but I do want to hear about your master's thesis. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this was a while ago now, but it was basically right around
your master's is in communication, you said?
communication, yeah. And it was right around the time, it was a couple years after, but when CrossFit switched from like doing local, regional, and then national competitions, and then whoever won those all came together, it switched from that to like the online format.
Yeah,
right?
so
Where
probably around
was like submitting
2011-ish, yeah.
Yes. So my thesis was a couple years after that, but basically it was talking about, and I spoke to some of the like folks over at CrossFit HQ and stuff back in the day, but it was like talking about how they did that, how they took this massive global in-person analog event and literally brought it online, how it was organized, how they got people to participate, how, it's because it is a communications thing, right? It's like how you're able to communicate
exactly
this stuff and maintain like, consistency and stuff like that. Like that's an epic thing that has never been done before or even seen or contemplated before. It was really, really impressive at the time. And it was just kind of like a in-depth sort of look at how it was done and maybe implications for, and actually now that I think about it, it kind of could be useful again now in like, well, it could have been useful in the pandemic time because I'm thinking of how like that platform could have been useful for like, college football recruitment, right? Where like you don't have to all go to a place, you can do this kind of stuff online or whatever. Anyway, that's
CrossFit was, now that you say that, I don't think a lot of people appreciate that or give them credit for being so far ahead of the game where, they went online and now it's almost the norm. You see all these, the bigger regional competitions like Wadapalooza and Granite Games and all those, a lot of them start with an online competition, which wouldn't be there. I mean, CrossFit has done so much for the fitness industry that it continues to impress me. So what was the first recipe you put in the book?
Well, the first ones that I played around with a lot for myself were stuff with chicken hearts and chicken liver. And one thing that I want to tell anybody who is still listening and is interested in organ meats
we retain almost 100% of the listeners through the whole podcast.
Good. And I think we're just doing a great job here. So people are going to want to keep listening. Doesn't have to be liver all the time. All organ meats are nutrient dense and they are more nutrient dense than muscle meat. So if you cannot get your head around liver ever, don't give up. Try heart, try, like you said, bone marrow.
Chicken liver is an easy, good one to start with.
Very easy.
It's not as like, I don't say pungent's not the right word, but it's not as strong as like beef liver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's, that's another, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we've been working within our Renaissance Periodization, a nutrition company, and they're part of the affiliate partnership network with CrossFit. And my coach, Dr. Jenkins, I was like, hey, just so you know, I eat a lot of organ meat, testicles being one of them. And he like looked it up. He's like, I cannot believe how good this is. Mm-hmm. He was like, I'm shocked. He's like, I've never looked this up. but he's like, it's one of the leanest proteins I've ever seen, and it's got a ton of nutritional value. So I think, like you said, it's just really good quality. And honestly, like out of all of the organ meats, testicles is like the easiest from a texture standpoint, I found. Like,
Well, I mean, another kind of tip that a lot of people won't know is that generally with organ meats, the scarier looking organ meats tend to be the milder tasting and sometimes
that's
easier to prepare. So examples like testicles, like tongue, like brain, these are things that people
tongue
have a
is
really
the
hard time.
best.
Tongue's delicious. Brain tastes like nothing. It's like creamy and delicate, and you scramble it in with your eggs and you don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
Testicles are a very mild flavor. So the ones that look the scariest actually tend to taste the best. And the ones that look like the most kind of simple and innocuous, like kidney or liver, are actually like super strong tasting that you need to like, get your head around. But another tip too for people is like start with small animals. Cause as we said, chicken liver is a milder taste than beef liver, buffalo liver, bison liver, right? Start with smaller animals. So chicken, turkey, lamb, even lamb heart and lamb tongue, it tastes like lamb. If you like lamb, the flavor of lamb, they have like lamby flavors. Like if you put different animal hearts in front of me, like cut up, I could probably tell you what animal they're from because you can taste the animal in the organs. But yeah, I started with like these super simple chicken liver mousse, which is like probably one of my most popular recipes. I think I put it on my website just because people ask me so much. I was like, just here it is. Just, it's fine. It's good. Just make it all the time. And I make it for myself probably once a month and feed it to my kid. Chicken hearts are so easy. Again, high in protein, super high in CoQ10, which is an antioxidant that's really, really good for hardworking athletes. And they taste
Can I make
good.
Can I make your mousse with beef liver?
Oh yeah, any liver,
Cool.
any liver.
I'm
It just
check
tastes
that
better
out.
with chicken liver. That's all. But yeah, you can do.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I grew up. My grandma used to make chopped liver, and I still have.
I have a chopped liver
fond
recipe
memories
in there
of-
too. Yeah.
I got to dig into it. You send it to me, and then we moved. It's literally in my nightstand next to the bed.
Well,
Just
keep
because
me
I'm trying to
posted
keep
when
it
you
away
make
from my
some.
daughter. Yeah, but do you know where most of the organ meat goes because you go to your local butcher like I do, they have it. And they're always surprised because, like, for the longest time, it was just liver. Then it was like, hey, by the way, do you have tongue? Oh, by the way, do you have testicles?
Mhm.
And, they always have it. But
Yeah.
for most farms or, butchers out there, where does it just get wasted or does it get put somewhere else?
Luckily, I did an interview with a farmer that's in the back of It Takes Guts, and it's a really cool interview, and I learned a lot from it. And one of the things I learned is that fortunately, stuff still doesn't get wasted. I mean, the animal is being used. It's just one of those things where, like, a lot of the organs will be either shipped to places like Mexico who actually eat organ meats. So it's like ironic. We're harvesting this animal and we're taking basically the leftovers and we're giving the good stuff to other people. That's what we're doing because we're scared to eat organ meats. It's crazy. But it goes to like, maybe dog food or like animal food products. But everything gets used from like the bones and the intestinal casings, hide, all of these things. Hide is where collagen comes from. That's another thing. We talk about like familiarity and people just being scared of things that are different. Do you think a lot of like women who are using collagen as a beauty supplement know that this stuff is coming from like the hide of a cow? It's basically like
or
powdered
collagen protein.
Yeah, and of course that's why there's a big ridiculous industry for plant-based collagen, which is literally not a thing, and it is complete misadvertising that says in the small print somewhere that this is just like some plant-based herbs that stimulate your own collagen. It is not collagen. How many people have reached out to me and said like, "Hey, do you know about a plant-based collagen?" And I'm like, I will lose my shit right now if one more person talks to me about plant-based collagen. It's not a thing. It's like asking for plant-based bone marrow. Like,
right, that's not... like the Impossible Burger. It's not a burger.
Oh my god. Anyway, I don't even know where I was going with that.
Well, when you reached out to me, I told you tongue. Let's talk about tongue for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the tongue. It's like whole. It's a big, like it's massive for those that've never gotten a cow tongue, and it's got this like I don't know what would you call it, a sheath around it.
Yeah, I mean it's the outer layer of skin with the taste buds and everything. Like what your tongue
all that.
Looks
like you could see it. Like you can see the taste buds and all that when you get it. So again, I'm not like fantastic at it. So I would literally just throw it in the crock pot with water. And it was like a 50-50 shot, right? Half the time, it would come out great. I'd be able to peel it off. It'd be this tender, delicious meat. And half the time, it would get like rubbery, and I'd have to cut it? What am I doing wrong?
You could be, depending on how long you're putting it in there, you're either undercooking or overcooking it. You do need to cook it the right amount. And then you also need to let it cool a little bit, because the skin, that tough outer layer, will, once it's cooked properly and you kind of let it sit for a minute, it will start to separate naturally on its own. And then you can do that
Yeah.
beautiful peeling away that's super simple.
So, and
just
the
shred
meat
it.
is like, it's so like, for those that have never had it, like I
Amazing.
cannot tell you, like, it is such a tender, delicate meat. It is so good.
It's like pulled pork or brisket or something.
But almost, it tastes like almost
richer,
like leaner. Yeah, I don't know if it's actually leaner. I'd imagine the tongue's
it's
not a
pretty
very
high fat,
fatty area.
actually.
Oh,
No,
is it really?
It is pretty high. Yeah, yeah.
That's where I hold all my body fat, is right in my tongue.
Exactly.
But I haven't looked. Is there a good tongue recipe in there?
There's
I'm
a
assuming
few.
there is.
There's a few, because it's one of my favorite cuts. And even in the new book, Carnivore-ish, I didn't go too heavy with the organ meats in that one, because I wanted it to be more mainstream, just trying to get women to eat more protein, not necessarily like liver. But there's a couple in there too, because I love tongue. But my other suggestion for people who are listening, who are like, okay, you're kind of winning me over, but like, I'm not going to go buy a tongue anytime soon. One of my other recommendations is, when you go out to a restaurant, just look a little bit longer and see if you can find some organ meats on a menu, because they're everywhere. You're just not looking, right? Like, if you have a good,
delicious.
If you have a good taco place, a good Mexican taco place, they will have tongue tacos. They will.
Will they?
They're delicious. Yes. And it's the best. Like, honestly, just if you're scared, just suck it up. Just order a tongue taco. You will not regret it. And that's another message that I give to a lot of people. Suck it up, because a lot of people are like, it's hard to eat too much protein, and like, it's hard to learn how to cook organ meats. And I'm like freaked out by it. And I'm like, you're an adult. Like, learn how to nourish yourself properly. Okay. Every meal shouldn't taste like a chocolate cake or a bucket of cream cheese. Okay. We're nourishing ourselves here. We're adults. We need to like do this in a way that, again, ideally is, lessening our negative impact on the world and the environment and the food supply chain. We want to be respectful and not wasteful. And we also want to nourish ourselves. This is the intelligent way to do it, is to eat the entire animal. So, I'm not telling you to force food down your throat and force raw liver down your throat, but like, we need to change our expectations that food should be incredibly cheap, incredibly easy, and incredibly hyper palatable all the time, because that's not really normal, and it's not necessarily the way it should be. And I think the fact that our food culture is that way is what has led us as a culture to so many issues around obesity and cardiovascular disease and all of these things, because our idea of what food should be is so skewed.
I was with my cousins. We went to a pumpkin patch. We try to go every year we take the baby to the pumpkin patch. And that just happened to be where we were. But you go out in public these days, we're so biased because we go to the gym every day. But you go out in public and the world does not look healthy. Like, that's just a polite, nice way of saying it. And I was talking to my cousin. I was like, isn't it crazy? These people are wearing, whether it's nice clothes or fancy jewelry or, tattoos. Like, you're doing all of these things to supposedly like make you look better, except the most important one, which is take care of your damn body. And I'm just like shocked. Like, I don't understand how that's not, it's not taught in schools, I suppose. And you're probably like me, as you grew up, like someone, for me, it was wrestling, or someone just caught your attention and you started working out. And luckily it was like, hey, come with me. And this is going to, change your life. But a lot of people just never had that. And it's like, how do you not take care of the most important thing that you have on this planet, your body?
Because beautiful clothes and tattoos are instant gratification, and eating well is delayed gratification. And that's way harder to do. And you have to be disciplined, and you have to like really, really care. And it's not easy, or else we'd all be doing it perfectly, And even people like us who are extremely disciplined and who have been going to the gym as part of their life forever and who understand about nutrition, we still fall and have dips and highs and lows of kind of falling off the wagon sometimes, because we live in a culture that makes it so easy to do that and to pick the easy route, right? But I actually think that if we spent a little bit less time thinking, like equating health with how we look and equating health with our abilities and how we feel, and understanding that how we look is a byproduct, I think we'd actually be better off. I feel like one of the biggest challenges working with female clients is that we're so focused on the aesthetics that we're missing sort of the lifestyle and the importance of health. And again, I'm not saying that aesthetics aren't a worthy goal and aren't good, because everybody wants to look good, and to say that we don't is a lie. But if we can focus more on like skill development and health improvement, looks like improved body composition and looking good and looking sexy is always going to happen when you're healthier and you feel good about yourself. And so if we, again, we can't, women can't get stronger and learn new skills in the gym by starving themselves and doing 2 hours of cardio. So if we switch that focus to like, look, how can we nourish our body so that we are in a place where we can work hard enough to grow muscle, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And maybe instead of caring so much about how much you weigh, you think about a new sport you want to play or a lift you want to get good at, all of these things. And then with that comes actual intrinsic confidence and empowerment, because you feel capable and you feel good about yourself. And then you look in the mirror and you're like, oh shit, like I have some delts, or like I look better in my clothes or whatever. So anyway, to your point of like, North America is looking less and less healthy every day. It's because we are. And I think that if we focus, but it's very divisive, right? So if all we do is talk about how fat or unhealthy people are, that just makes people defensive and angry. And then we can fight about body positivity or whatever all day long. Instead, let's talk about health. Let's talk about like goal setting, and let's talk about doing things in the gym that are fun and make people feel good. And then guess what? People are also going to start looking better and losing weight.
I love it. I think you nailed it. I think, it's like anything. Start with these small wins, and, something you said earlier, like that instant gratification piece. Like we got to push that out. Nothing in life comes quick or easy. That's at least not anything that's worth doing. So, so same with your nutrition and your body. Like don't do your diet for 3 days and then get upset you can't see it in the mirror. The scale doesn't move. Like give it a month, give it 2 months and more. Well, This has been awesome. It Takes Guts, Carnivore-ish, both available on Amazon. Is that the best place to check them out?
Yep. Amazon or any actual bookstore. If you go to bookstores still in real life, it usually is there.
In the actual bookstore, real bookstore.
Barnes and Noble. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's there.
I love a good bookstore.
Every time I go to a bookstore, I go and look for it, and then I put it somewhere where everyone can see it, because it's usually hidden in some like weird specialty section. And so I take it out and put it front and center, because I don't have no shame. I don't care.
Put it right with the best in front of the
latest be a bestseller.
James Patterson book. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
or
cool
next to the best-selling vegan cookbooks. That's what I usually do. There's like a healthy food section, and it's just all salads. And so I usually will put my books there, because that's where they belong.
I love it. That's cool. Yeah, I love. One of my favorite things would just be to go. We take Madison to the library a lot. I love it.
Amazing.
Just sit down. It's quiet. Well, except for the kids area, it's nuts. But you just sit there and you read a book. It's the best thing. It's the best. I'm excited. I'm glad I got introduced to you. Thanks for sliding into my DMs.
And talking about testicles.
If I'd be lying if I would say you're the first woman that's done that. But unfortunately, I think that's true, actually. But I appreciate it. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow up. We're, like I told you, a little in limbo now with our rental. I don't even think we have our crock pot or Instapot with us, but I'm going to definitely check out the chocolate mousse, the liver mousse recipe.
There is a chocolate mousse.
I'll tag you.
There is a blood chocolate pudding recipe in there. If you want to get real adventurous.
I'm going to start making some of them once we get a little more comfortable, and I'll tag you in those. And I'm just excited, because I love organ meat. So if I can get them to taste a little better, that'd be just a bonus. Thank you.
That.
Thank you so much, Ashleigh, for hopping on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.